Yes. Hello and good afternoon. Welcome to Game Changers with Fabian Lyon. My name is Fabian Lyon. I am your host, and it's a pleasure to join you here today. We have a special show that we wanted to dedicate to Haiti and what's going on down there with our Caribbean neighbors. And I thought it's best to bring on one of the most acclaimed photojournalists who cover the Caribbean basin so well. Her name is Vanessa Charlot. She's a friend of mine. This will be her third time on Game Changers, and for that, I'm so thankful. And later on in the show, we'll also be joined by another highly acclaimed photojournalist, Carl Juste, who has worked for the Miami Herald for a number of years. But first of all, I'd like to bring on Vanessa Charlot. As I said, well, she went down to Haiti to cover the funeral of the slain president there and just get a temperature of what is going on there. So, Vanessa, good to have you on here.
Thank you so much for having me, Fabian.
Yes. And Vanessa, we've talked about, at least through text messages, your experiences down there in Haiti. And I just want to ask you, as far as since you've come back, just how have you got your thoughts together, and what's at the forefront of your thoughts as far as your experience going down there and covering the funeral?
Well, being Haitian American, I understood that it was very important that I lended my voice and my nuanced understanding to the social and political climate in Haiti. And it's not to say that, like I know everything, because I do not. I no longer live in the country. And I think that it's two very different realities when you live in the country every day, as opposed to when you're now an outsider who has personal ties to the country, but is looking to amplify the voices of Haitians on the ground. But it was definitely a very, very difficult assignment for sure.
Hmm. Okay, and we do want to send our condolences to the family of Jovenel Moise, and obviously also hopefully we can get a quick recovery for his wife who was injured in that attack. Vanessa, what made you want to go down there though? As far as obviously you have ties there, but you could have covered it from your home up here in America. Why this time did you feel that need to go down there and cover these events?
Well, typically when one talks about Haiti, right, the first thing that you hear is that it's the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere. You hear the pain and struggles and a lot of the things that happen in the country that contributes to its like perpetual political unrest and social unrest as well. But this was a historic moment.
Mhm.
The country's president had been assassinated. There was growing gang violence. There was civil unrest in the streets. And also, there was still everyday life happening. So I wanted to be there personally on the ground to see what was happening. As a photojournalist, I wanted to document the realities of what was happening and also, again, speak to the reality of it. I wanted to really show um, not a Western lens of
Mhm.
Haiti, because a lot of times Haiti experiences these fly by nights photojournalists or journalists that come to Haiti. Haiti is geographically close. That can almost like in a very opportunistic way, make their careers from Haiti, but not have any personal ties to the country. So I wanted a firsthand account, and the firsthand being myself, where I can engage in conversations with Haitians. I can engage in conversations with local journalists and political officials as well, to really get a feel of what has happened here.
Mhm. What was maybe the biggest surprise in what you expected going in, and what really happened on the ground, so to speak. I'm sure there might have been even more than one surprise.
Oh yeah, yeah. You know what the biggest surprise was? How truly chaotic it was. You know,
Mm,
oftentimes when you hear Haiti is on fire, right? And you get there
hmm
and you're like, okay, yeah, this block or like this small area is on fire. And then I
Literally.
get to Cap right. And then the rest of the country is fine, right? And then
Hmm
I get to Cap Haitien and I'm like, oh, this whole situation, the whole city is very tense.
hmm
There's political unrest on the boulevard, which is one of the major streets in Cap Haitien. There's also protests happening on Rue L, which is Street L. There are blockades entering the city on both sides, right? So
hmm
from south coming north, there was blockades. Nobody can really get into the city. And then I guess east going west or west going east. No, east, no, west going east. There are blockades as well to get out of the city. So
hmm
I was really taken aback by how truly chaotic it was.
Okay. What sense did you get from speaking to citizens of the various areas that you visited? Was it a different reality for those maybe in a more chaotic part of the island as opposed to those maybe in a less chaotic part? Just maybe sum up that for us a little bit.
Yeah. It was very mixed, right? So people in Port-au-Prince had been living with um, increased insecurity, gang violence perpetuated by G9, Jimmy Cherizier, aka Barbecue, who is
Hmm
now known as a notorious gang leader in Haiti, and also living with massacres that have
Mm,
happened in various communities,
right.
right? So they were dealing with that reality. Whereas in Cap Haitien or the North, that wasn't so. But the entire country had been dealing with economic um, strife because right now, a gallon of gas on the street is $10 US. So if
Right.
you can imagine, if it's $10 US, the cost of public transportation goes up, the cost of living goes up, the cost of food goes up. So, like in Port-au-Prince, people were not really surprised, right? There wasn't as much of an emotional outcry from
hmm
people in Port-au-Prince, whereas in the North, because he is originally from the North,
hmm
um, and he has business in Port-au-Prince, which is in the Northwest Department. He is from Otru, which is about 35 minutes outside of Cap Haitien. People were very emotional about it. He had a lot more supporters there. The other thing is that this was a common discourse in terms of people on the ground. They were really, really troubled by the fact that this was the fifth Haitian president that had been assassinated. I mean,
Mm,
fifth Haitian president from the North that had been
right.
assassinated in Port-au-Prince.
Wow.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah. And if you're just joining us, we are here with noted photojournalist and lecturer Vanessa Charlot. She has obvious ties to Haiti, just a love of the island nation, as many of us do. And Vanessa, I just want to ask you, how frustrating is this, just with those ties, for not only for this to happen, but we all want the best for our native islands, wherever we're from, our native countries. How frustrating is this for you, these latest chain of events?
It's incredibly frustrating. Sometimes it feels like Haiti takes one step forward and 10 steps back, right? And we know that it's a perpetual thing that happens on the island. And what makes it even more frustrating is for, in my opinion, seeing the everyday Haitians who are very hardworking, who are trying very hard to raise their families, to build businesses, to send their children to school, to create a better way of life for themselves, to continuously be bombarded with these traumatic events, right? Like it's not normal to live under those conditions. It's not normal to have to perpetually fight in order to live comfortably in your own country. So it's extremely frustrating.
Hmm Okay. And we're going to go to some shots, some great shots. I looked at them at least three times, just to get a closer look. And we're going to start with a picture of yourself. And one of the things that you did bring to my attention, Vanessa, is you said at times there were bullets whizzing above your head. I don't know if this is such a moment, but just explain this picture to you. Was this once you landed? And just maybe speak on this picture for us. Thank you.
Sure. So this photograph particularly was when there was a violent civil unrest on the boulevard. The boulevard, like I said, is one of the major streets in Cap Haitien. And as
Hmm.
you can see, I have my Apple phone in my hand. And the reason why I did that is because the first day that I landed in Cap Haitien, I went to the city center to kind of like get a feel as to what was happening in the city. And I was met with a crowd of protesters who were chanting justice for Moise in front of the Delegation du Nord, which is a governmental building. Um,
Hmm.
and there were some foreign journalists that just got there. And as soon as they saw them, they started calling them assassins and saying that they were complicit in the murder of Jovenel Moise. And also, there was a conversation about them being concerned as to how foreign media were going to depict them, right? So
Hmm.
were they once again going to be depicted as this poor, uncontrolled black country, black people? And so I knew very quickly, okay, I cannot come out with my camera, right? Like,
Hmm.
let me try to blend in as much as possible. Luckily, I had the Apple phone with me. I was able to put it on Apple Raw and create photographs that had high pixelation. And so I'm actually walking a little bit behind the crowd. And I'm
Mm.
looking over my shoulder because there is another crowd coming up
Right.
behind me. So I
Wow.
was trying to maintain some kind of situational awareness. And the other crowd behind me were definitely intense.
Right. Okay. All right. If we could just stick with maybe this picture here, and just explain what's going on here, Vanessa.
Yeah, so right in front of these two young boys, there are tires burning. And what struck me is that the fact that they're two young boys. And
Hmm.
I'm thinking about like how this will become normal to them,
Mm.
a situation that should not be, right? And if you can see in their faces, one of them looks concerned, the other one looks like, well, this is a part of everyday life.
Right.
And I find that to be very, very disturbing, right? The
Hmm.
normalization of trauma among Black nations and Black people. So
Hmm.
that's what's happening there. It was basically an intersection at the end of the boulevard where there were actually three different points of burning tires, and that's one of them.
Hmm. Okay. And once again, Vanessa, you do most of your art in black and white, and maybe just speak on that a little bit before we get into the other great pictures that you have here. Your choice of doing that.
Yeah, definitely. The reason why I choose to photograph in black and white is because I want to eradicate the concept of time, right?
Mm.
So we know that civil unrest is something that isn't new to Haiti, but civil unrest isn't new to anywhere, right?
Hmm.
So when you see this photograph, yes, this happened in 2021, but there are similar situations like this that has happened in 2019 in
Hmm.
Haiti, or when you look at the South African apartheid in the 1990s, where you saw similar things. So I want to completely eradicate the concept of time, the concept of location, and speak to the universality of struggle, but also political strife within a nation.
Hmm. Okay. How much had Haiti changed since you've been there last, Vanessa, for you?
Yeah, it hasn't changed much.
Hmm.
It hasn't changed much at all. Haiti is, it's there's a saying which is "La caille, c'est la caille," which is home.
Hmm.
Um, there hasn't been a huge change in the demographics or the landscape, but
Hmm.
what has changed drastically is this growing sense of insecurity in the North, which is very, very unusual because the North is, I would say, typically one of the safest locations. It is
Right.
usually Port-au-Prince that is
Hmm.
quite tumultuous.
Okay. All right. Okay, and we're joined by Carl Juste. Carl, are you there?
Yeah, I am. I'm here.
Yes. Thank you so much, Carl, for for joining us here. And Carl works for the Miami Herald, and he does some great work here. He's based out of Miami. And thank you so much, Carl, for joining us on, I believe, such an important show here tonight. And joined by one of your mutual friends here,
Yes.
Vanessa, and mine as well. So thank you so much, Carl. It's an honor to have both of you on.
Pleasure. Pleasure is all mine. Hi, Vanessa. I'm glad you.
Hi,
Are you
Carl.
still in Haiti?
No, I'm back home.
All right, then you need to stop by. You know, you come back home, you
I
got to
already
check in,
know.
right? You got to check in. All right.
I already know.
All right. All right. All right. Good work, by the way. Good work.
Thank you.
Great work as always. And Carl, if you want to chime in at any time. And obviously, we just looked at a couple of slides that Vanessa took. Here's another one. And maybe just speak your whole feelings about what has transpired the last couple of weeks.
And Haiti is perpetually in flux. And, you know, a lot of people think that, you know, the responsibility of Haiti to have any lasting change, they try to see the diaspora as its savior, but you know, Haiti is going to change from within. This is like Groundhog Day. You know, I mean, I've covered coup d'états, I've covered earthquake, natural disasters, and you know, I'm trying to look at Haiti from a lens that's beyond 1804. And you know, as important that date is, it's not the end all of Haiti. It's actually the beginning of not just of Haiti, just of world history.
Right.
And we collectively of people of color on this planet, we have an enormous amount of debt and gratitude to that sacrifice. And when I say we have to get beyond 1804, is that we need to understand with that bravery, our ancestors who paved the way to truly try to live a life of freedom, that we need to extend that mindset and keep that spirit within Haiti itself. Haitians who live in Haiti is going to change Haiti. We on the outside can only be cohorts, we can be collaborators, but we cannot take the responsibility or think that we are the cure. And the institutions that are important in sustaining a society has pretty much deteriorated, and that has come about, you know, through external and internal forces. So when I think of Haiti, I look at it as a difficult but beautiful experiment with democracy. And we expect, you know, United States can't get the democratic movement correct. I mean, we just had an attack on our parliament, you know, and you know, and we as a country, and because I'm Haitian American, you know, we like to dictate and tell people, you know, what a democracy looks like. Well, ask George Floyd. I mean, I could go down a list.
Yep.
You know, ask the people who live in Michigan and Flint. What does democracy look like? You know, and so Haitians cannot be no more responsible in fixing our democracy as Haitian and diaspora responsible in fixing theirs. It's important that we help our brothers on the island, all brothers, all people of color, because Haiti has influenced the whole world. including South Africa, including all the nations of Africa and Europe and South America, from Venezuela to even the founding of Chicago, New Orleans. I mean, we would not have expanded west if it wasn't for Haiti. The Louisiana Purchase would never have occurred if it wasn't for Haitians. But having said that, I have to chime in with what Vanessa was saying, is that, you know, it's really important that we understand that Haiti cannot be defined in terms of time, because if that's how you choose to define it, then we're going to be very disappointed. It has to be defined in terms of our, you know, of our need and our expression and understanding what democracy is. Being the only nation on this planet to ever liberate itself. Right. I always said, you know, Haitians will always pay the price for liberation. And because you live in a hemisphere which for better, which for worse, defines people of color as a lesser than or as another. Okay, I mean, that's a whole Western Hemisphere. And to break that and to throw that idea back into the system's face and say we're not others. We are freedom fighters. We are people of dignity, of intelligence, of culture, and we will not be denied. You know, the foot of the Western Hemisphere fell on our necks. Right. It's still there. Okay. Yep. And I'm just keeping it real. I mean, how I speak for myself. I don't speak for my employer. I don't speak for my family. I speak from my personal experience. Right. So if we ever going to get out of this climate of suffrage and of pain, but there is a beautiful struggle in Haiti. There's a beautiful happiness in Haiti, and moving forward, and Vanessa has captured it. I'm trying to capture it. I have a book coming up soon, Havana, Haiti, being published. It's been a while, but it's going to finally come out. But we need to we have to look at Haiti from multiple viewpoints and through multiple lenses. You know, people say, well, you never hear anything good about Haiti. Yeah, well, the Herald writes a lot of stuff good about Haiti. But every time we write something good, every time Jackie Charles goes the extra mile and write a piece about its culture, its intellect, its beautiful struggle, you know, a president gets assassinated, or a coup d'etat happens, or a journalist gets murdered, or there's a manifestation. And those things tend to overshadow, those little minutes tend to overshadow the hour of beauty that Haiti exudes, the hours of beauty that Haiti exudes. So moving forward, I want to have those type of conversations. But, you know, I cannot deny what my heart feels and my eye sees. Right. We have a lot of pain. We have to come together in terms, not only as Haitians, but in terms of our original intent, which was liberation. And how are we going to liberate ourselves if our minds are still confined to the paradigms of the past? How are we going to do that?
I think just to speak to that point, I think, or maybe to go even deeper, I think that Haitians live in a perpetual state of fight or flight.
Yeah.
I think that because of when you look at the conditions around them, it's a constant survival mode, right? Where tomorrow is not really a factor. But at the same time, not to diminish what's happening in Haiti, could one blame Haitians? when you really don't know what tomorrow may bring, right?
Yeah.
Like you have school children who plan on taking the state exam, who may plan on going to class, and then tomorrow happens and someone gets kidnapped or there's political unrest or something. And so you have, like, it's difficult, I think, for any human being to really flourish in that kind of state. And I am in awe of those of us that flourish despite of.
Right.
But something that cannot be ignored, to what Carl was saying, is that we have to reimagine or maybe change the dynamics of the conversation when we're talking about Haiti. And we have to be mindful that many Haitians are trauma induced, right? Like this idea of trauma is a perpetual thing, and many of them operate from that space. But I think that the human psyche can only take so much, right? So when you see the political unrest, it is like a physical manifestation of what happens to the psyche, where basic needs like the sense of security, food, shelter, water, all those things are not always a guarantee. Right. It's quite challenging.
It is. You get up in the morning, there's two things you need. You know, you need fresh water, right? You need something to eat, but you need a sense of safety. Now, it doesn't take much to stop the country. There could be a strike and the whole country shuts down. Yeah. Now, what Vanessa was talking about, and what I find a little bit more different, and I agree with Vanessa, is now the North has become under this cloud of turmoil.
Right.
Where you have the people used to flee to the North because that's where they can find some peace and kind of recollect and regenerate this sense of, for lack of a better, Haitianism, the sense of being able to move forward. And you go out, you go to Okap, or you go up to, get outside of Gaumont, or you go to Port-au-Paix, you take a break and you come back to Port-au-Prince, to continue to work. But now you're finding that sense of instability is moving to the North, to the very places where it used to be pretty quiet. And again, we can't tell Haiti a damn thing because democracy, it is really, really, it is a continuous experiment. It really is, and that's global. And this idea that, like Vanessa just said, being perpetually under stress, both internally and externally, and the combination of both. I mean, it doesn't surprise me 2 Haitian Americans were involved in the assassination. Doesn't surprise me.
Right.
Okay. I have to ask myself, when are we going to get a collective consciousness outside of 1804 experience? When are we going to say, okay, 2021, we're Haitians, so we're going to make sure that we start talking about the stresses and the anxieties of living on the island? And we're not even talking about what natural disasters that happen between hurricanes or floods or just a heavy downpour, how that transfixes and just changes the terrain. People's lives are washed away, literally. I mean, I've covered multiple mudslides and lives of villages or pandemics. I went to a village one time in the 90s, and I think it was close to about like 30 or 40% of the children under the age of 5 were dying from something that was supposed to have been eradicated. And you have to ask yourself, is Haiti a failed state? And And I say no. I say it's not a failed state. It's a state that people have failed. And that's a huge difference. You know, that's a huge difference. It's not a failed state. It's a state that we, and me included, have failed.
Right. Okay. And if you're just joining us here on Game Changers, we are joined by Carl Juste and Vanessa Charlot, two friends, and as I said before, highly acclaimed photojournalists. We are discussing the state of Haiti, who has been in a state of upheaval, politically and civically, since the assassination of Jovenel Moïse. And his wife, the First Lady, survived the attack. And once again, condolences to the First family and a speedy recovery for his wife. And Vanessa went down there for the funeral, and she captured just the temperature of what's happening down there. And Vanessa, I wanted to ask you, as far as what do you think, what can be done differently? Because it seems like, you know, how can others, even, it doesn't have to be Haitians, but what do you foresee as, how can we change this narrative? It seems like we're back here every couple of years or every couple of months, and for such a beautiful island and beautiful people to be going through this, as you said, it's traumatic. What can we do more collectively outside of waiting for always government to make these changes and a new political party?
Yeah. One of the things that you just mentioned is, how can we change the narrative? Something that I believe is extremely important is to, one, stop viewing Haitians as the other, right? There is nothing, better yet, as soon as you label one as the other, you must too accept the fact that you are an other as well to them, right? So if you want to label them as the other, you must accept that as a reality, and that equals the playing field. Mm-hmm. Secondly, let's eradicate the idea that their experiences are isolated. Mm-hmm. Right? Like it only happens in Haiti, or it only happens on the continent. Because the reality is America is wild as heck.
Right.
That's the reality, right? Mm-hmm. But the manner in which we talk about it, right? Like look at what happened on January 6th. Now there is an actual conversation about maybe it wasn't an insurrection, but we know what it was, mm-hmm. unless you were blind, right? So then how do you begin to shift that? How do you talk about it as something that happens in the human experience? And when you begin to talk about it as something that happens in the human experience, you then begin to humanize Haitians. Because for right now, Haitians are viewed as a fetish, something exotic, something uncontrolled, and something rather undesirable, but you can't look away. Because it's like there's this disturbing nature about it, but it's beautiful at the same time, right? Mm-hmm. So it's like this mesmerizing thing. So when you begin to just kind of like strip away those layers and stop looking at them as the other, and stop isolating their experiences, and view Haitians as a group of people who deserve a decent quality of life, mm-hmm. I think that's when we begin to change it. Because the other thing too is that our media and how we talk about Haitians also has an effect on the island. Mm. So often you hear Haitians saying very disparaging things to themselves about themselves.
Right.
Right? Which mm-hmm. is very, very damaging, because the stories you tell yourself ultimately becomes the stories that manifest. Right? So we also have to encourage Haitians to view themselves differently. So these are things that I think that we can begin to do in terms of providing a counter narrative in hopes of Haitians reimagining something for themselves. Because I agree with Carl. Like, as someone a part of the diaspora, I can't change Haiti. I don't live in Haiti. That's just not realistic. But what I can do is through my work, create things that incites thought, hopefully, encourages a different kind of discourse, and fuels internal dialogue that is both empowering but also progressive.
Mm-hmm. Okay, definitely. Vanessa, while you're on the ground, so to speak, was there a message delivered by any of the citizens there that was maybe surprising, different than what you expected for you to deliver that message to the rest of the world, so to speak, through your lens?
It wasn't necessarily something that was surprising, but something that many Haitians expressed was that they wanted to be left alone.
Mm.
And I think it is almost antithetical to foreign interests or foreign media or whatever to leave Haiti alone, allow them to deal with their own issues. There's a saying, a Haitian saying that says, which means I'm an adult in my house, right? So respect the sovereignty of the people. And they wanted to figure out a way to deal with this situation free of an oppressive gaze and free of oppressive influences. And that's not necessarily a new message, but it is a message that is often ignored.
Do you think that was a shot at the foreign intervention that we've seen for so many years, not only in Haiti but throughout the Caribbean? It seems like when things are on an upswing, inevitably there seems to be some major political interference from the superpower, so to speak.
No, yeah, definitely. It was definitely a shot at that, but think about it. Since when in the influence or another country has been beneficial to the sovereignty of another nation? We can't think of one time where it has been good for a Black nation to have European influences or white influences on that country. So absolutely, I think that it was a way of Haitians to stake their claim in their own destiny and how their country develops in the future.
Okay. Carl and Vanessa, I wanted to ask you, from your experience, we mentioned earlier about kind of controlling the narrative, and I see now way more journalists of color out there canvassing, covering the major stories. Maybe a big change, Carl, from say even 20 years ago. Just tell me, how does that warm your heart to see our young people getting more involved, or would you like to see even more of that from our young people getting into media journalism?
Yeah, of course we'd like to see more, but the thing is, at the top end, the editors, the people who put stories on the front page, they're pretty much running the same MO. The toughest part about covering Haiti needs to have reconciliation with itself, and I have to agree with Vanessa, is that it needs to have an internal powwow and reconcile and come to terms with its past and present and future. Haiti could feed itself. Haiti can employ itself. Haiti was the richest island in the Caribbean, outproduced all the colonies that France had, outproduced them, was able to grow coffee, rice, tobacco, sugar. I go down the list, Haiti can feed itself. But again, because of its geopolitical positioning in the development of the Western Hemisphere, it always seemed to pay the price for its own liberation. And I think now that Haiti needs to have a reconciliation among itself, and start to dictate to the world what it is to be Haitian on their terms. No longer boat people, no more carrier of AIDS, no more the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere, none of that stuff. And not to say the reality and the pressures that Haiti's experienced, but it's experiencing throughout the Caribbean. You know, unemployment is very high among people of color in the Caribbean.
Right.
Okay, so let's face the facts. But what does a lot of turbulence, a lot of elements of turbulence, when you have failed institutions, a heavy marketing of guns and violence, okay, when you have the disrespect of women and of children, okay, and this is not something only Haiti suffers from. I mean, I go to France and show you the same darn thing. I could take you to Spain and show you that. But the thing is, their narrative are controlled by them. And now you're seeing when you bring, journalists of color, and they're bringing these nuances in retelling these stories, because that's what we do. We don't tell stories; we just retell them. And someone speaks to us, and we amplify that voice, right? So as you've seen the amplification of these voices coming from people of color, then the nuances and the subtleties begin to take shape. And that is promising. But I have to agree with Vanessa, and Haiti needs to be left alone in all terms of it. I mean, in terms of the religious work that's happening there, in terms of these so-called orphanages that are popping left and right, in terms of, even in terms of aid. I remember we did a story years back during the embargo about rice that was donated to Haiti was being resold on the market. And you see the bags that said do not resell. But what do you expect people to do?
Right.
When the movement of goods is limited. If you're someone who's living in City Soleil, okay, and a water truck comes in and it's only once a week or once a month, how does someone get some cold water to drink? How does that person navigate to get fresh water to put formula in her baby's mouth? And to mitigate those circumstances, it requires ingenuity, and some ingenuity is creating a black market for all sorts of services.
Yeah.
And that's the reality. So I'm with Vanessa. Let Haitians figure it out. Let's have a big Congress and have them come in and say, hey, we're tired of this, and let's let them solve their problems, because I know they can. I tell you, I've seen Haitians fix a flat tire 15 times on the same tire. Okay, all right. So don't tell me.
All right.
Don't tell me.
No doubt.
And it happens in Jamaica, right? Come on. It happened in TNT. I mean, I traveled to our lives in Brazil. You go to favelas, and people are learning to get by. But Haiti has always been a stopping ground for all type of ills. If it's not the drugs, if it's not the arms, if it's not in trading of labor, and it's always seemed to be a place where people think they can go and do their bad deeds and not be punished. And it's no different than what happened with the president. Okay.
And to that point, let's not just, I agree with Carl, but the reality too is that happens inside as well, right? Yeah. So when you're looking at the political climate of what's happening in Haiti, for instance, there's also a conversation between Black Haitians and the mulattoes or the Arab Haitians, right? Who the mulatto, the Arab Haitians basically have a monopoly on the wealth in the country. So now Haiti parallels something like a slave plantation, where you have white owners, and that can be France or the United States or Canada. You have mulatto or Arab overseers, and then you have the population. So in addition to everything else that's happening, there is serious strife between Haitians, and I think that needs to be handled internally as well. So there's just a lot. It's a very confounded and complex situation for sure.
There's a lot to unpack. There's a lot to unpack.
So my question, when something like this happens, is who is running the ship? Who is truly running the ship? Was it the president? Is it indeed the president? Is it the couple of elite families that are in Haiti? So who's calling the shots, and where do we even bring all this to even start making change?
Right. So typically, who calls the shots in Haiti, in my experience, and this is, this can be debated. It's typically the oligarchs of Haiti, right, which are the elite families, and a lot of them are not native to the island. They have descendants from Syria and Lebanon and different places like that, and so they're the ones that, let's say, may own, because there's been a privatization of the electric company. So they may own IDH, which is the name of the electric company. A lot of them own the major grocery stores. A lot of them have control of the ports. So they say what gets to be imported and exported out of the country. And so the president of sorts presents as a figurehead. And the president's job is really to ensure that he can maintain the relationships with these oligarchs. Because if not, Haiti can descend into chaos very, very quickly. When you see protests in the streets of Haiti, it is typically paid for. And one has to understand that too, when Carl was talking about the black market, is the manner in which many people eat, right? Port-au-Prince is undeniably very hard. So let's say for all of us, we're all parents. If we were in a situation where you see that your child cannot eat, or you cannot send your child to school, and they say they're going to give you $20 to hit the streets and you can feed your baby for a week, you're going to hit the streets.
Right.
Like, and like when people see Haitians in the streets and like, oh my God, they're uncontrollable or whatever, a lot of them have families to take care of. This was an economic means to an end. And unfortunately, a lot of young people aren't given other options, so they resort to that. But definitely the elites control the country. But look, again, it's not unique to Haiti. Like it's all over the world where the elite dictate how a country is governed.
And this is what brings the demise of democracy. We have oligarchy. We have people with so much power, so much influence that laws do not apply to them. I remember a couple of years ago when they finally found out who was doing all the kidnapping, and it turned out to be one of their own.
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay. And this whole idea that that Haiti operates in a vacuum in terms of its issues and troubles and its inability to sustain a economy. It doesn't operate in a vacuum. It's look at the pressure Santo Domingo places on Haiti, and look at the policies that Latin America has with Haiti. And more importantly, I was trying to get a photograph of when Aristide was being forcibly airlifted out of Haiti. I saw the video. So, and it had that could not happen without certain governments allowing it to happen. So when I say, Haiti's poverty is not in a vacuum. It's interplay with so many other things. Geopolitical, race, history, with resources. It is a rich island which has been exploited for not the betterment of its people, but for the betterment of outsiders.
Yeah.
And that's plain and simple. And until we change that paradigm, we're going to continue living in this horrible Groundhog's Day. And we wake up every other day is someone else, some other leader being killed. And, some of the politician or the Senate's, being dissolved, or the judges being dissolved, or the Supreme Court. And it's this constant sense of uncertainty that becomes normal. And we all know that is not normal, but they make us to think that we should accept it.
Yeah.
All right. And I'm saying I don't accept it because for sure, yes, every country has its issues. I mean, we still have not come to terms with institutionalized racism here. We still have not come to, and we will never be a great country of our possibility or our possibilities until we come to terms with our original sin, which is racism.
Right.
So I think Haiti has an original sin, but that is to be defined by Haitians, not by me, because I don't live there. Okay? It has to be defined by them. And it has to be defined, and it has to be a consensus to say, here's the problem. Let's find ways we can fix it. It's not this one swoop thing that's going to change it. It's very incremental. When you see microloans, how well they work in Haiti. Okay? When you see that you give a Haitian, 50 gourds, and that person, or he or she, most likely she, is able to turn that 50 gourd tenfold.
Right.
Tenfold.
Yeah.
Okay? Which usually she. Okay? Anybody would tell you, women run the household. Women keep Haiti intact. It is the thread that holds that flag together. It is women.
Yeah.
Bar none. Bar none. Okay? Bar none. And it is like every other democracy that exists on this planet. It is women of color that's going to save it. Period. Yeah. All I have to tell you is Georgia. Okay? I could go further.
Right.
I just tell you Georgia. All right? It is women that are going to save the democracies in the Western Hemisphere because they understand the service of another. When I see a mother hold on to a child and take that child to market and make sure that that child is fed with the little money that they make. Okay, with the little money that they make, that they put that future first. When Haiti can do that as a nation, then we're moving forward. When Haiti can turn its hopes into their child or to their children and then feed that hope every day, then you'll see some change. But it's Haitians that have to do it. It's not the press. It's not NGOs. It's not United Nations. It's not the US. It's not all these other institutions which have, pretty much propped up this false economy. I remember I used to go to Haiti. I could find a hotel room at a good hotel for $40 for $50.
Right.
And then all of a sudden you have these NGOs, you have press come over, they're all fighting for the resources. So now we used to pay $80 for a truck to work and to tell these stories. Now you got to pay $250. And on top of that, you have to get a fixer that knows the street. And on top of that, you know, you got to worry about being kidnapped or getting your stuff stolen, you know. And you ask yourself, okay, at the end of the day, what has changed? The only thing that's changed is fewer people have been lining their pockets with more money, and more poor people have been going to bed hungry. That's the only thing that's changed.
Okay. We're about to wrap up, but we are joined by Vanessa, Charlot, and Carl Juste. We're discussing the state of Haiti and slain President Jovenel Moise and the civil unrest that has ensued since that tragic moment in not only Haiti's history, but just the world's history for that to happen. I did want to ask you, Vanessa, I know you have quite a significant following that's even watching you right now, as far as the diaspora, the Haitian diaspora here in the United States. What have they been relaying to you since your return, or even while you're over there, as far as what has transpired and what their hope, where their hopes lie right now, as far as a change in where we are right now?
Yeah, so many of the people that support my work and were following me, first of all, in order to get there, you know, like I went, but I was working with journalists on the ground. So you know, like a lot of this trip was really, really supported by the people that follow me, right? They afforded me the opportunity to pay journalists on the ground, because there are quite a few Haitian journalists who are risking their lives or who has sacrificed their lives, like Diego Charles, who was killed covering this same story.
Wow.
So one, I'm forever grateful for them. A lot of my Haitian American followers, they're really at a loss. They don't know what to say. They don't know what to do. They know that they're proud to be Haitian, but they're not sure as to what comes next. And like Carl and I was saying, I don't think that it is our place to determine what comes next on the island. And then for the young Haitians that are there, that are living the reality, you know, many of them want to travel. Many of them want to leave the country. And then you have those that are diehard, you know, never want to leave. They just want to see the country get better so they can live and work and have families and things like that. So I just feel like Haiti has its own future in its hands. And I hope that despite the unfortunate assassination of the president, there will be some kind of justice. We still don't know what that will look like for the president, because that is still a very, very big discussion in Haiti, even though it's not, I don't know if it's still being talked about as much here in our press. But that is still a topic of concern. There's still contention between people in Port-au-Prince or the oligarchs of Port-au-Prince versus the masses. There's still a conversation about colorism that is happening in Haiti. People are still dealing with economic uncertainty. Gangs still run the streets of Port-au-Prince, specifically Matissan, which is a community in Haiti. So there, like, even though, you know, I'm back in Miami, there are still issues that are currently ongoing that we don't have an answer for. And we don't know where that will bring Haiti. And the state of affairs are dire, right? It is bad. It is bad. And again, like, I hate to like present Haiti in such a negative light because it's a beautiful country, but the state of affairs are difficult to navigate through. So leaving Haiti left me with more questions than answers. I was completely moved by the speech of First Lady Martine Moise. I thought that she was very poignant. She was very strong. So was her. So was her son. Jovenel, even though he was considered a very unpopular president during the ending of his term, for many Haitians, specifically in the North, he died as a martyr. Because a lot of them believe that he died fighting for the needs of the people. So, the language has changed somewhat around him when it comes to individuals that live in the North. It is quite unsettling that the North has become rather tumultuous, because the North is notorious for not liking any of that stuff. No protests, no burning tires. And you know what? That's when I knew it was bad. If the North is protesting, then it's bad. You expect Port-au-Prince, that's normal. Right. If the North does it, it's unsettling. Because, like, in my experience, glass bottles did make the asphalt on the ground. That was just what it was. Light posts were, dropped on the ground. Yes, there were bullets whizzing it just was what it was. Definitely terrifying, but look, Haitians are just going to have to figure out what works for them. And I think that as someone a part of the diaspora, we just have to sit back and be very supportive of how Haitians should choose to define themselves and their destiny moving forward.
I'm gonna say one thing. Would you imagine if the president of Dominican Republic was killed by 18 Haitians, 18 Haitians and 2 Dominican Americans? They would have declared war on Haiti. That would have been an act of war. And I don't think people understand the ramifications or the implications of this brutal and savage act. Okay, it is that sovereignty has been raped.
Oh yeah.
Okay, now, would you imagine somebody went into the White House, okay, and was led into the White House? The president was killed. His wife was injured, and they all and this whole country be in uproar. Now, what makes it because it's little Haiti that it's because it's Haiti and it's a small country that doesn't have the same type of reflection? This is an enormous loss.
Yeah.
Put your politics aside. He was not liked by many, but he was still the president.
Yeah,
absolutely.
You could question his election. You could question his presidency in terms of his election. Was he elected fairly? People could say something about Trump, or about Bush.
Right.
Okay. So before you start to talk about, what they say, person who owns a glass house don't throw brick stones. Well, I think we need to start looking at Haiti with a whole different set of lenses now. And I think this is a great moment in time for Haitians for them to press that restart button for them. And I don't know how that's going to happen, but until that happens, I think we're going to continue to have this political Groundhog Day for a long time to come.
I second that opinion.
Yeah, and Vanessa and Carl, the hope here is that cooler heads do prevail during the civil unrest, political unrest. Haiti deserves way much better. And regardless, this is not just a Haiti problem. This is not just a Caribbean problem or a world problem. This is a human problem. And I don't know what's going to change events there, but we were definitely hoping and praying that somehow And there's one thing about the Haitian people. They are so resilient time and time again throughout history. They've always found a way to bounce back despite all the immeasurable odds against them. And for that, I really, really salute them. And I hope once again, and I know once again, that they're going to bounce back from this and hopefully just chart a more positive future for everybody. And I hope whoever is calling the shots there will realize it is in even their best financial interest to keep peace and to really get this island nation going in the right direction. So that is my prayer and hope here. I thank you, Vanessa and Carl, once again for coming on the show and leading this very, very important discussion here tonight.
Fabian, what did Wesley Snipes say? Always bet on black. Okay, I'm betting on black. Haiti's gonna be all right.
No doubt.
Always bet on black.
No
Haiti's
doubt.
Gonna be all right.
Okay.
All right.
Carl, only you could weave an apropos Wesley Snipes quote into discussion on Haiti. So once again, my brother, always the best mic drop from you.
All right, brother. Appreciate you.
Appreciate you too, man. Vanessa, thank you, my sister, for coming on and always supporting the show. And once again, we're hoping and praying for the best for this great island nation.
Yes. All right. Thank you. Have a great one, Fabian.
All right. You too.
Have a good one. Thank you, my
brother.
Again.
All right. Thank you. Bless.